In 1979, Ridley Scott made sure the world never forgot that in space no one can hear you scream, with his second ever feature film Alien, and first foray into the sci-fi and horror genres. Today, the film is considered an iconic classic that every other studio and director wants to replicate, and Hollywood tries every 5 years or so, with the more recent attempts being Daniel Espinosa's Life in 2017 and William Eubanks' Underwater in 2020. This is outside of 20th Century Fox's 5-year cycle of dredging the franchise back up, with Ridley Scott's Alien Covenant in 2017 and Fede Alvarez's Alien Romulus in 2024 being the more recent examples. However, none of these films, not even the ones directed by the great Ridley Scott, are able to recapture the magic of Alien. And I believe it's because everyone's forgotten what really made Alien different in 1979. If you're looking for inspiration on creating the next great creature feature, Alien is a great place to start. But if your search ends here, you're doing yourself a disservice. There are obvious greats you should also check out, like John Carpenter's The Thing in 1982, but I think it might be even more important to check out the older, much cheesier, worse movies that inspired the 70s through 80s revival of the 1950s creature feature. I understand the effects are corny, the acting's wooden, the dialogue's bad, often the picture is grainy and flatly lit, the editing is either boring or discombobulating, and they do not treat women well. But seeing what doesn't work in the 1950s gives you an even greater appreciation of what worked in the 70s and 80s, and gives insight into how a filmmaker can adapt and evolve tools of storytelling into something new and exciting. When writing the next big creature feature, you need to do more than just steal the plot to Alien, because I'm going to make a bold claim here. Alien 1979 stole its plot from The Thing. No, not John Carpenter's The Thing. I'm talking about Christian Nyby and Howard Hawks' The Thing from Another World in 1951. Don't believe me? Well, allow me to tell you the story of both films at the same time. Some affable blue-collar working Joes investigate a crashed alien spacecraft and unknowingly bring a killer alien into their confined quarters. In Alien, our space truckers are awoken from cryosleep because their computer picked up a strange signal. The crew land at the signal and discover a derelict ship complete with a colossal corpse and alien egg chamber in the basement, and our monster of the film sneaks aboard our ship through some horrific parasitic reproduction cycle. In The Thing from Another World, our Antarctica researchers see some strange lights crash not far from their outpost and decide to check it out. The crew find a giant ship buried under the ice and accidentally destroy it trying to unbury it, and the monster of the film sneaks into our outpost by playing dead in the ice. Some of the crew express a healthy concern and quote guidelines and protocol about bringing something so strange and potentially deadly into their isolation, while the scientists in the crew exhibit a morbid curiosity and disregard for the safety of others. In Alien, we have Ripley quoting protocol and expressing concerns over infection and quarantine, while the medical officer Ash ignores everything and lets the creature, still hidden in one of our characters, onto the ship. In The Thing from Another World, we have Hendry expressing concerns over the monster he thinks is a de-thawing corpse, while scientist Dr. Carrington ignores him and decides to take blood and skin samples. Before the alien fully awakens and emerges from its hiding place, the scientists are able to discover even more disturbing and impossible things about the creature's physiology, especially centered around the blood. In Alien, Ash is attempting to remove the facehugger from Kane's face, and we discover the creature is keeping the man alive, and it has acid for blood. In The Thing from Another World, Dr. Carrington's experiments on the Thing's blood samples reveal it has some sort of super growing factor that means the creature is still alive, and we discover the creature keeps itself alive by drinking blood. When the monster does finally start going on its rampage, the crew are shocked, but quickly form into search parties with flamethrowers and tracking devices capable of approximating where the alien is. Sometimes. In Alien, we have Dallas searching through the air shafts while Lambert uses air displacement to approximate the monster's location. In The Thing from Another World, we have the entire crew sweeping the outpost with a Geiger counter to approximate the monster's location. After the alien has taken out a few of our crew and the situation has grown dire, the leaders decide the best option is to trap and kill it. But the scientists and medical officers think the creature is some sort of perfect specimen worth trying to study and communicate with. So a scuffle ensues, ending with the science nerds getting beaten up and the heroes blowing up the monster. In Alien, the few remaining crew decide they'll bring all their supplies to the life support ship and blow up everything else with the alien. But Ash, who's revealed to be an android, has different plans, and tries to kill Ripley and the rest of the crew rather than let them kill his perfect organism. In The Thing from Another World, the remaining crew decide they'll bring all their supplies to the generator room and set a trap in the outside tunnel that will electrocute the monster if it comes close. but Dr. Carrington has different plans and tries to warn the monster and stop the perfect organism from killing itself. Both science nerds fail, and their perfect organisms are killed in embarrassing ways unbecoming of such iconic movie monsters. Both films build off a fear of the unknown, and when boiled down to their base elements, both films follow the same generic rubber monster movie formula that dominated the screens in the 50s and 60s. So how is Alien different? Alien is different from these other films because of the direction, the editing, and the care given to its rubber monster and cheesy plot. Never before has the audience felt more trapped with characters and a monster than in Alien. The tagline, "In space, no one can hear you scream," is an incredible piece of marketing and a rare case of a film living up to the hype. The difference between Alien and anything else that has come out before or since is director Ridley Scott and the absolute craft he put into every single frame of this movie. Behind the scenes documentaries and interviews with cast and crew reveal that at every step of the creative process, from the moment Ridley Scott was involved, he was fighting for the film to be given more time, more care, and more effort. Alien changed quite a bit from script to screen as creatives like H.R. Giger were brought on to flesh out the alien world and creatures, and designers like Ron Cobb were brought on to build up the technology and science fiction elements of the universe. The movie could have been made 1,000 ways, but I don't believe any of them could have been as enthralling, engaging, and inspiring as the version Ridley Scott made. Before the film was scooped up by 20th Century Fox and Ridley Scott was attached, the writers Dan O'Bannon and Ronald Shusett imagined the film going to a director like Roger Corman, who was famous for making sci-fi monster movies on the cheap. In fact, before the head of 20th Century Fox had read the script, the rights were almost sold to Roger Corman's company, and the all-time classic Alien, which has spawned a franchise and made careers, could have just as easily been a forgotten B-movie on the shelf. Before Ridley Scott signed on to direct, the studio figured the film only needed $4.2 million as a budget, but the first thing Ridley did after being hired was storyboard the entire script to show his vision, and after he did this, the studio decided to double the budget to $8.4 million, and by the end of production, director Ridley Scott had fought for his rubber monster movie to receive $11 million, nearly tripling what everyone thought the film was worth. And it was worth every penny. There are movies made today with hundreds of millions of dollars, and they don't look half as good as Alien. Alien was Ridley Scott's second feature film, but you would think it was his 100th with the precision he put into this film. So many haunting but beautiful shots of the ship build up the tension but also just fill out the world and make it feel real and lived in. I'm reminded of the closing shots from Halloween where John Carpenter leaves the audience searching every dark corner and shadow for Michael Myers. Ridley Scott has you looking behind every computer screen and through every pipe of steam for the Xenomorph. The ship itself has a great blend of soft white living space and dark rusted industrial space that creates a sense of safety with the audience. The movie teaches you there is strength in numbers and power in the light, but as the film goes on, it breaks these rules, creating a Kubrick-esque element of psychological horror, where in the beginning you think you know what to fear and what to trust, but by the end, you only know to fear the movie. The POV shots of characters running down corridors through columns of steam and past flashing buzzers and lights create a never confusing but always stressful energy of chaos through editing and sound mixing. The final 20 minutes of the film, when it's Ripley and the alien alone on the exploding ship, are my favorite parts as the movie becomes a pure anxiety-driven thrill ride that I somehow forget is what the movie devolves into every time it starts. Everything from the camera movements to the editing and the acting are all slowed down to a very comfortable pace at the beginning before being ratcheted up every 15 minutes as the situation unfolds and worsens. It's Hitchcock-esque the way the film subverts having a main character until the final act when there's only one character left. The film keeps you guessing on who the main character is, constantly making the audience feel safe with the character before having them shockingly attacked by some new horrific thing. The psychosexual tones of the entire alien reproduction and life cycle, as well as the visualization of everything either being phallic or vaginal in this Geiger nightmare, screams both Kubrick and Hitchcock to me, just like the Hitchcockian blonde screams as she's covered in a Kubrickian spurt of blood. I'm not making these comparisons to take away from the film, and I don't make them lightly. Stanley Kubrick and Alfred Hitchcock were both masters of their craft and auteurs capable of using their art to explore psychological themes with a special eye that I think Ridley Scott was capable to tap into with this film. Alien was Ridley Scott's second film, and I would place it alongside some of the most important entries into both the science fiction genre, like Stanley Kubrick's 2001: A Space Odyssey, as well as classics in the horror genre like Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho. Alien has a sense of scale, not just to the set design and cinematography, but to the story as well. The jockey scene is an incredible inclusion to the atmosphere of the movie, and sells that this story is a part of a larger, sprawling narrative that gives a lot of weight to the things that happen later in the film. I see the alien spaceship as a foil to the human spaceship we've been exploring. It's used as a way to make the Nostromo more approachable by comparison. The technology is not as alien, the space is not as gigantic. It feels more human. And what's incredible is that the studio didn't want to include it and fought against Ridley Scott for having it. The studio felt the audience wouldn't care to see this giant set, and it would be more cost effective to have the crew just see a giant alien footprint or corpse and imply that their society must have high ceilings and great architecture before jumping straight into the facehugger scene. But Ridley fought for the giant opulent set to be built, and he even used children in smaller spacesuits to make the room and the corpse of the face jockey feel even grander, because he knew how to make the film feel big and important. And that's the real difference between Alien and anything else. It feels important. The entire filming process sounds like a massive headache, with producers and studio executives breathing down Ridley Scott's neck for taking too long on every shot and setup he was filming. But if you've seen the film, you know it was worth every extra second he took to light and frame the scene just right. The actors complained that Ridley Scott didn't know how to deal with them and preferred to keep his opinions on his side of the camera, letting the actors figure out their characters and motivations for themselves. And while this could have backfired horribly, I'd like to think it came out great because Ridley Scott knew who he was hiring and trusted they had it figured out. And again, to call it Kubrick-esque, I really feel like the confusion and fear you see on the characters' faces must be informed in some way by the real emotions of the actors, and while I'm against abusing actors, I am pro getting alien-level performances. There was an alleged 3-hour edit of this film which writer Dan O'Bannon apparently begged them to take an hour out of for fear of the film being labeled pretentious. And overall, I think the decision to cut things and to bring down the length to just under 2 hours was genius. Anything longer and the film could ruin its tension, like an Alien Covenant in 2017, or like Dan O'Bannon feared, it could make the movie come across as pretentious, like Prometheus did in 2012. Both of these future Alien prequels' running times are just over 2 hours, and both were directed by Ridley Scott. I've seen very little of what made up that extra hour of the original edit, and can only assume it featured longer versions of the scenes we see in the movie and more beautiful shots of the Nostromo's interior. I have seen a cut scene in which Ripley discovers the Xenomorph has gunked Dallas into the wall and is slowly morphing him into an egg while she's making her escape at the end of the film. And while I find the scene interesting as a fan of Xenomorph biology, I'm very glad they cut the scene, because not only does it give up some of the mystery of the monster, but it also slows down the pace of Ripley's final exit, which, as I mentioned earlier, is my favorite part of the film. However, I wouldn't mind seeing an extra hour of just swooping shots of technology in this universe and the many lights and levers on the Nostromo. The Alien franchise might be the one horror universe I would want to live in, simply because I want to push every single button. This is a credit to the designers behind the film, who did an incredible job at constructing the ship, which was apparently all actually connected, so that you had to walk through the entire Nostromo set to get to whatever room they were shooting in, and it's beautiful. You never once question if you're actually on a spaceship, because everything feels real and dangerous, with pressurized doors and tight supported corridors lined with buttons and knobs and gizmos, and I want to flick every single one of them. All of the signs and stickers, which look like real industrial warnings and labels, are designed by Ron Cobb, and they add a realism that other films just don't think of. And ultimately, that's what made Alien different. Ridley Scott thought of things others wouldn't. He knew the shots, he knew the scale, and he knew how important this film could be if he just gave it the time and effort it needed to truly shine. And he fought like hell through production to make it so. Now, over 40 years later, we are still talking about the importance and significance of the film. So, if you're trying to make the next creature feature, don't just copy Alien. Actually give your monster the focus, the effort, and the care that Ridley Scott gave his rubber monster all the way back in 1979.